Can I Not Marry audio web novel Chapter 40, The Legend of Zhu Yaofei and Chia Kun. On Saturday, the weather was just right, there is a gentle breeze in the air, very fresh. Only Du Lei Si who's walking on this road with a gloomy expression. A few days ago, she and her good friend Zhu Yaofei arranged to eat at a new restaurant. Originally this is a very common thing. However, she never thought that the president would suddenly appear in the doorway dressed casually, half an hour before she was ready to leave. He insisted on accompanying her and she could tell from his attitude she couldn't reject his offer. That moment, Du Lei Si was stupefied and shocked. As a matter of fact, ever since they got married, she still haven't introduced the president to anyone. Precisely, it should be said she had no intentions of introducing the president to her friends. The reason is very simple, sooner or later their marriage would end in divorce. Rather than let others worry about her after the divorce, she rather not let anyone have acknowledgement of her marriage to begin with. But today's circumstances are different from the past. According to the current situation, temporarily such things as divorce isn't likely to happen to her, and speaking from her heart, she is also reluctant to leave the president. Although this man slightly overbearing, slightly parsimonious and intentions are a little bad, but being with him she felt complete reassurance. Even if the sky crumbles there's someone brave enough to stand in front of her. Wait, stop thinking. Why is she thinking of his goods? Du Lei Si regained her conscience and stared at the president quicken his footsteps ahead of her. She couldn't help but become angry. He must be planned long ago that he would be accompanying her. He intentionally waited for this to emerge so she would be taken by surprise. Her prepared mind didn't have the heart of Bodhisattva to introduce him to Zhu Yaofei and Chia Kun. When the time comes, how is she supposed to them that she is now a married woman? He clearly is deliberately trying to embarrass her. Odious. Extremely odious. With such a thought, she couldn't help but lower her head as she quickly walked away. Suddenly, a hand was on her shoulders. Why are you walking so fast? The certain person's face was relaxed, completely inconsiderate towards her current depressed mood. Du Lei Si lowered her head and did not speak. You wouldn't be angry with me, right? Of course. Saying to this point she paused and suddenly noticed the president's dangerous narrowed eyes. A faint smile hung on the corners of his lips. Of course I couldn't be more happy. Du Lei Si said with a wry smile. In her heart she despised herself 100 times. Forget it. She'll just think of it as taking a dog out for a walk. Woo. When has there been a dog holding onto their master's shoulders? When they arrived at the restaurant, it was 10:30 in the morning. According to Zhu Yaofei's message, she and Chia Kun booked a private room. They were already waiting inside. Following the hostess to the private room, the door opened suddenly from the inside and a person came to greet Du Lei Si with an open arm bear hug. Condom. Did you miss me? This charming voice, so outspoken character, needless to say, there's no doubt this person is Chia Kun. Dead fox, you better stay farther away from me. Du Lei Si was about to push him away, when a hand was one step ahead of her and captured Chia Kun's arm, and ruthlessly stood in the middle of them. Du Lei Si was surprised. Chia Kun was also surprised. After he recovered his shocks, he seemed to understand the situation and deliberately put a pair of distressed appearance. This gentleman, you do not need to be so impulsive, I really did not have that kind of special interests. Lian Jun loosened his hands and said with a straight face, previously I did not, furthermore in the future there wouldn't be any. Puff. On the side, Du Lei Si sprayed out her saliva. At first glance, this sentence the president said seems like nothing, but a closer look, it was clearly informing Chia Kun. After their encounter he would never had any illusions about his homosexuality. There's only one word to explain this, poisonous. Chia Kun had an awkward expression. At this time Zhu Yaofei, who has been sitting inside the private room, also came out. Today she was wear a white vest, black dress collocation. Her body always looked great. Her curly dark hair was held up by sterling silver hairpins and on the bridge of her nose there was a pair of black frame glasses which exuded full of intellectuality. At first glance, one wouldn't really associate it with her queen and stingy personality. Just as Du Lei Si was ready to greet her, but Zhu Yaofei stared at Lian Jun. She was taken back. Why is it you? It's you. Lian Jun's tone was also slightly surprised. This scene caused Du Lei Si become ignorant and slowly asked, do you know each other? Zhu Yaofei nodded, and glanced at Lian Jun. After determining she knew this person, she generously said, I've been on a blind date with him before. Du Lei Si had to admit that she suffered from a very hard mind explosion. While they studied together, Zhu Yaofei was famously known for going on blind dates. Her blind dates range was staggering. Once she thought of Zhu Yaofei and the president going on a blind date, she really had this kind of indescribable joy feeling. One was black belly, while the other was a queen. How did their matchmaking date end? She was very curious, filled with curiosity. While Du Lacey's brain was constantly simulating the date scene of the two, the dish has served up as usual. All these dishes must be chosen by Zhao Yaofei, although the price are not cheap, but the dishes are absolutely the best of the best. The first dish was a plate of sizzling beef. The rich aroma pulled Du Lacey back from her thoughts. Seeing the hot beef sputtering on the silver foil, she couldn't help but lick her chopsticks. Who cares how they dated? The most important thing right now is to fill her stomach. As she stretched out her chopsticks to get the most rich piece of beef, Lian Jun, who was sitting on the side, was one step ahead of her, snatching the piece of beef away. Woo! Beef god! Du Lacey suddenly felt very angry, sadly glanced at the president. She was completely stunned. Because she saw him holding the piece of beef toward her, then placing it into her plate. Eat more, you're too skinny. Quote ellipsis quote. After a moment of silence, a villain in Du Lacey's heart began to roll out, or. She was so happy. She was filled with happiness. Wifey, I also got some for you to eat. Jia-kun said, placing a piece of beef in Zhu Yaofei's plate. Who is your wife? Zhu Yaofei didn't spare him any feelings, then rudely interrupted Du Lacey and Beef God's isolog. CC, how come you're with him? This, him, she's referring to is naturally the president. Moving her gaze away from Beef God, Du Lacey didn't know how to explain to Zhu Yaofei how and why they are together. Then she heard the president speak. He had no intention of hiding the facts. We've been married for more than 3 months. Zhu Yaofei was almost choked to death on the piece of beef in her mouth. No, it can't be true. When you told me you married into the wealthy and influential, it was the truth. Damn it, how could Zhu Yaofei vulgarly say the words, married into the wealthy and influential, so easily? Du Lacey was little bit embarrassed. She weakly nodded and swept her glance at the president. He had a smile, not 1 ounce of anger was detected on his face. Condom. Aren't you a rich woman now? Jia-kun seized the opportunity to add this sentence. The word, rich woman, was even more vulgarized than, married into the wealthy and influential. These two individuals couldn't be more tactful while describing it. Du Lacey secretly glanced over at the president. His expression remained the same. According to Du Lacey's experience, if the president does not speak, it does not mean he is not angry. Perhaps in his mind now he is thinking about how to deal with her. No. In a moment she must put her flattery skills to use. Speaking of flattery, her chance has arrived. Just when Du Lacey was worrying how she could flatter the president, a signature dish from the restaurant arrived, pickled cabbage fish. This pickled Chinese fish dish is famous for its tenderness and deliciousness, coupled with its spicy flavors. Although she does not eat spicy, so she doesn't know how it tastes. Since it is a signature dish, it shouldn't taste too bad. Du Lacey decided to use this to flatter him. So she eagerly placed a piece of fish into the president's bowl, while suggesting, you should try this signature pickled cabbage fish dish, it tastes very good. Lian Jun stared at the piece of fish covered with chili in his bowl and didn't move. It can't be. The president seems really angry. Du Lacey's heart tensed up. She stared at him with yearning and hopeful eyes. In her mind she kept on pleading, quickly eat. Quickly eat. Facing such yearning eyes, Lian Jun stiffly picked up his chopsticks and clipped the piece of fish. He picked it up and ate it. The joy left his eyes and was replaced by a frown. Of course, a certain idiot did not pay attention to these details. She only thought that her flattery have finally succeeded today, thus she must double up her efforts and continue to flatter him. Hence she placed a second piece of fish into the president's bowl and continued to eagerly stare at him. Just like this, Lian Jun, who lived for nearly 30 years, for the first time ate pickled cabbage fish, spicy chicken wings, kung pao chicken and spicy crawfish. Later, even Zhu Yaofei could not help but exclaim, CC, your husband really knows how to eat spicy food. Of course, he is my husband. Du Lacey smiled like a flower and picked up another piece of sautéed crab in hot spicy sauce. Here, try this. Lian Jun.